Talk to me about why you want to be a city council member. What issues you see our city facing that you think you can help with?
Yeah, so I lean on my experience with being an implicit bias trainer and knowing other people's lived experiences and centering those experiences. I think it's really important more than ever that our government is centering itself in everyone's lived experiences, bringing them to the table, listening to their concerns, and facilitating government from that point. So yeah, I think that's why I'm running for sure. It's always been a lifelong dream, and I know people talk about it as a cliche, but one of my high school teachers was like, Justyn, you are actually doing it. You're doing what you said you were going to do.
How cool is that?
So yeah, it's been fun. It hasn't been easy because you get to start hearing the real life experiences and stories from everyone in Des Moines, which has really positioned me to be a good leader, a good listener, and has pushed my candidacy full steam ahead. So,
biggest issues facing the city?
Biggest issue, water for sure.
Oh, we're going to talk about water.
That's the reason why we're all here. If we lose that resource, I'm afraid Des Moines will become obsolete and the surrounding suburbs. So yes, that for sure. And then just, really giving a city a vision and plan when it comes to housing and taxing and where we're putting businesses and what are we rezoning. And then I think really another thing is just showing up to these different cultural events. People want to feel like they have a voice again. They want to know that there is one city council person that they can come to, that he's going to listen or she's going to listen and do the work of facilitating government for them.
Let's start with water.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't make it rain.
Yeah.
What is the solution? I mean, water wells are they sustainable?
So there's a cost. It's an additional cost that I don't think we need to do. I want to work upstream and build those relationships with farmers and counties and other cities, and provide incentives that can come from the state, that can come from our city for people to put cover crops in, to collect and capture a lot of those nitrates that are coming into our waters. Yeah, I think that's the first approach. I'm willing to do that work. I'm willing not to demonize anyone, but build strong bonds with other fellow Iowans so we can make sure that waterway stays clean.
What do you think is the answer and the way to increase our population, but also to maintain our population, not have people going out to the suburbs to have lower property taxes and better schools, to have people the employers who can't find employees, help them find employees, to find the employees who can't find jobs, help them find a job?
Right. I think the first thing is the city needs to have a written plan of housing. And that's for affordable, that's for affordable living whether you're a renter, and that's also for folks that are owning properties, residents that have properties, that we're not pricing, our retired population out of their homes, but then new buyers as well are able to afford to purchase. I think that's the first thing. Stabilize that market and get people into homes and roofs over their heads so they stay. And then the next thing is jobs. Are we paying people a livable wage so that they can make ends meet, and that they can continue to grasp onto that American dream that wakes us up every day? I think a livable wage. Well, right now we're having discussions on $15 being a livable wage, but then also we have to just have the discussion about healthcare. High deductible plans aren't really feasible. It really is self-insurance. It cost us $10,000 to have our first daughter, and we had to make some serious adjustments. So, yeah, I think those are some of the discussions that we need to start having. I don't feel like we're having those, but I'm really excited to be a voice to that, to be a voice of reason, a voice of common sense, and for the common man, but for all men too. So.
Okay,
women.
Let's talk about affordable housing and the plan of housing. Do you think, how do you create more affordable housing without putting too much affordable housing in one spot?
Yeah, I think the first step is we should be mirroring other cities that are doing the work whether we can mirror Oakland, California, and San Francisco with how they're doing sustainable apartments and buildings and housing. But then also we need to work closely alongside the neighborhood associations, getting some of those dormant ones reactive, so then we can start getting that micro level data of what's going on in your neighborhood, why your property taxes, are they going too high, who's being priced out, and then making sure that we're being flexible and fluid into adjusting the needs for each community.
What about food insecurity?
Again, we got to have a city that has vision and a plan. Right now, the city does not have that when it comes to addressing those needs. There are 5 identified food deserts by the FDA here in Des Moines that need to be addressed. And when we're talking about a food desert, it's just access to fresh produce, access to food, and it's not shelf-stable food like Cheetos, which I love Cheetos.
Love me some mac and cheese, but you can't live off of it.
It's food that nourishes the body. We have a lot of amazing nonprofits doing the work, but we got to make sure that the city's not becoming a hindrance to prevent them from meeting those needs. So specifically, like Sweet Tooth Farms, they're going to be sadly losing their lease to a deal to the city selling off to industry, and that's good. I love business. We need business, but we got to have a vision, and that vision is, if Sweet Tooth Farms is meeting the needs of our community and alleviate the burden off of the city, we should work a deal with them to make sure that they can continue and sustain.
You know, we know that there have been shootings on the north side of Des Moines, in the Drake neighborhood, on the south side of Des Moines, south of Watrous. Also, a heightened sense of crime in the downtown area. 5 shootings since November 2015 in the downtown area, and 3 of them have happened in 3 months. So, what needs to be done to get guns off the street and to stop the violence? Because that kind of violence trickles down to population issues and people feeling safe in their homes and people wanting to go into neighborhoods and all that.
We hear it a lot that these are isolated incidents. I don't see them spilling out into our communities and causing a lot of fear and ravish. Typically, the folks that are doing these crimes are quickly caught and addressed, and they go through the justice system, and rightfully so. I think we stay the course, but I think the most important thing that we need to do is make sure that we have enough resources so that we're giving people hope that they don't turn to that. I'm here because my father and my mother were hard workers. They still are hard workers, and they had the resources to put me through school, put me in sports, make sure that I didn't fall into the streets, because anyone is susceptible to fall into the streets. White, Black, Hispanic, Asian, anyone. We got to keep our youth busy. We got to give them vision. We got to give them hope for tomorrow. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make sure we have after-school programs, sports programs, and it would just be the same thing that are in the suburbs. I think that's how we address it. And I think another thing is we need to get rid of the box. We need to allow folks that have came back into the community from jail to be able to find jobs, and their past mistakes isn't what's doing harm. I know we talk about folks who make mistakes as if they don't want to do right again, and I constantly see folks wanting to do right, but not giving the same opportunity. If you paid for your crime, it's time for us to loosen up the barriers and allow them to come back to society.
There's been a lot of discussion within the city of Des Moines about racial profiling. There was a call for a ban on racial profiling that was passed. There was also a call for a civilian oversight committee that was not passed. Instead, it's this board that doesn't actually have any power. But the city says, let's see how that goes and then maybe move forward. We're not ending it. We're just maybe seeing where it goes. Do you think there should be a civilian oversight committee? And how does that happen?
Yeah, so I actually did a little small op-ed in the Des Moines Register on this. I think it would be an amazing idea. Let me preface, I don't hate the police. There are a lot of good officers that do the work who is a shining example of what law enforcement should be. But then also there are bad apples, and there are folks that spoil the bunch, that create this public perception of how not to do it. And I think what we need law enforcement to do here in this country is to be aware of their own bias, but start weeding out folks that get it wrong. That will start to instill trust in all communities. That's step one. With the step two would be, yes, a citizens review board to give a different lens, a different viewpoint, a different perception that isn't just a department investigating itself. So citizens from Des Moines, whether business leaders, nonprofit leaders, a grandmother, a retired grandmother, to give a different voice to what is being seen. The public would see it this way, and this is why we need to remove this person from this department. The public would see it this way, and this is why we probably should put them on pay administrative leave. Citizens need a voice at that table. So
there's been a large call in the last year from protesters, from community members to defund the police, and it has turned into this rather divisive topic of if you don't talk about defending the police as a council member, I'm not talking to you anymore. And if if you say you're going to defund the police, then you aren't going to talk to me. And
I'm not running on a platform of defund the police, but I am running on a platform of government accountability and transparency. Openness, being real with people, sharing files. When you mess up, you messed up, and be honest about it. That's how we restore trust in government. That's how we restore trust and build a police department where people see that it's serving them. Because there are communities that don't feel that law enforcement is serving them, that they're scared of them. I'm, as a black man, very scared of law enforcement. I've had experiences where I've been racially profiled and guns pulled on me, and I was a 16-year-old kid. So if I can talk in a way on this subject and not be so ravaged with hate and fear, which I could be justified in those feelings, and rightfully so, but I want to actually fix what is wrong. I just hope people will listen to me and follow behind to build a government that represents everyone and no one fears their government anymore.
Black residents of Iowa are 11 times more likely to be incarcerated, 7.3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana. So do you think the city of Des Moines can work towards something when the state of Iowa is not legalizing marijuana? Do you think the city of Des Moines can do something?
Yeah, I think you prioritize it. It's no different than what takes place in the suburbs. We know that my white counterparts use at the same rate as African Americans, but it's an issue of over policing. It's an issue of not being aware of your own bias, and sometimes it's a lack of empathy and humanity. When the opioid pandemic took place, we rushed to give resources to those folks. We didn't criminalize them. We didn't put them in jail. And it's the same thing with marijuana. People are using it for stress relief, focus, and anxiety, depression, to help eat. And there's science behind it that it's helping people. And we're now seeing that 25 other states are legalizing it for medicinal and recreational use. And Iowa needs to start being more forward-thinking. We hear about single mothers who are struggling with depression who go across Minnesota lines and Illinois lines to get the medicinal use for them, and that's what legalized it here in Iowa. So I think we just need to continue to be forward thinking, stop looking at people as criminals, and expand our hearts to have empathy for all.
With this movement of the protests and these demands of City Council, there have now been restrictions placed on the number of people who can speak at the council meetings, how long they have to speak. The council members say, city business has to happen. 25 people, 60 people, 100 people speaking and saying the exact same thing over and over doesn't allow us to be effective as a city. So what do you believe is the solve there?
Yeah, I think the first thing is city leaders, we have to show up to our communities, especially the ones that can be hostile and perceived as scary. But as a person who has studied politics and know the numbers and turnout rates, I love the excitement. But as leaders, for us to prevent that, we have to show up, listen to people's concerns, and find some common ground. Find if you're not able to do this policy, we can at least give you this. If we're not able to do this, we can at least give you this. But I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing discussions. I'm not seeing conversations, and that makes me sad. And I think that is why I announced my candidacy. I go into spaces where I'm not usually welcome, and I go in and I knowing that, and I leave making relationships and friends. But that requires courage. That requires a backbone. You have to be willing to be cussed out and realize that it may not just be you being the issue, but it's someone's lived experience that has caused that frustration. And how can you communicate in a way to de-escalate and then increase empathy and then get to the issue that they're there for? It may not even be about property tax. It may be about their mother passed and something's holding up the transfer of their home. It could be, it may not be about defund the police, but it may be about an officer who harassed a Black person in the community and nothing has been done. Get to the point, get to the data point, and do something with it.
What is your message to the people of Des Moines as we close this interview?
Hope. We can do this. I know, again, as a trainer, I have these tough conversations with different people's lived experiences and backgrounds. We just have to take a time to listen and not come and rebuttal someone's lived experiences and say, how can I help that? How can I fix that issue? And we can do that. And I'm here to facilitate that and push us forward together.